Hello everyone, welcome back to Looney Bin. My name is Looney, and today I present to you a take. A very specific take that you may agree with, but more likely you will disagree with, and that is perfectly fine. My take isn't necessarily gospel. I don't mean it as the actual truth. It is a take that I want to have at least some sort of discussion with you, the fans of Final Fantasy VII. And it's a very interesting take that I think can be considered a little loony, a little bit, the pun. But yes, so it is a take concerning a lot of the gold saucer dates, the play, the side quests, and all this stuff. It's a take that I know is debated a lot among shippers in the community as well. And it really concerns more of like the canoncy, or like what, you know, which gold saucer date is, you know, the canon route and all that kind of stuff. I'm presenting a kind of take that I personally feel is a little bit more reasonable towards the main part of Final Fantasy VII, the actual story, as well as the fact that it is a video game. And a lot of things in video games is the fun part that, you know, the developers let you experience and let you go through just to have fun with the game. And yeah, so it's definitely a take that you don't have to necessarily agree with, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not trying to make it or force you to believe this take to be the actual thing that will happen or what the developers are intending to happen. But essentially, this is the take. The gold saucer dates, the play, all that stuff, none of it matters. None of it matters to the overarching story of Final Fantasy VII. Now, that does not mean that whatever, you know, route that you took is, you know, means nothing to you personally, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm also not saying that what happens in, you know, the gold saucer dates, within the play, within the side quests, I'm not saying that it doesn't represent essentially what Cloud's relationship with his party members are, or the small tidbits that you get to showcase the the growing bond between Cloud and the rest of the party, as well as the party in general. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying overall is that at the end of the day, no matter which route you take, no matter which side quest you do, it doesn't matter, because no matter what path you chose for your playthrough, it will not carry over to part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII project. It will not carry over. Why? Because it is essentially a video game. There are 3 parts to this video game. Final Fantasy VII Remake had a situation where they presented 3 resolution scenes depending on your playthrough, right? I understand the developers, I think, I forgot where it was, maybe it was the Ultimanium that they said all 3 are canon routes. I understand that. But it doesn't necessarily make sense to me, simply just because you don't get any references to either of those 3 resolutions. At least to my knowledge. I could be wrong. I mean, I played this game like at least 3 times, so I could be wrong. I might have missed something. That's understandable. Let me know in the comments if I did. But it does not reference at all to any of the stuff in Rebirth. It's not referenced at all, because they don't carry over whatever you did in your playthrough over. What they want you to do is, you know, see all resolutions. That's why they give you like an achievement if you see all of them, right? But it doesn't carry over to Rebirth. The same way, whatever route, gold saucer date, side quests that you do in Rebirth will carry over into part 3, because those don't mean as much to the overarching, to the very big narrative of Final Fantasy VII Remake project that the developers are trying to tell you, to, you know, to showcase to you. Again, it does not mean that your experience, what you see in those side quests, in the gold saucer dates, in the play, don't mean anything to you personally, because they could mean a lot of things. You could use them for like describing relationships between Cloud and the rest of the party, because that's what essentially the Affinity System is all about, showcasing, growing the bond between Cloud and the rest of the party. A lot of JRPGs do this because they don't necessarily have the time, you know, in a game as big as Final Fantasy VII is, or a lot of JRPGs are, to fit all these bonding relationships within the main narrative story. It's the same way how in the Tales games, like Tales of Symphonia, you have these conversations, these small little conversations when you travel throughout the world that you could look and read and look upon, right? Those are just expanding the relationships and, the characteristics of these characters far beyond what the narrative actually tells you. That is what is happening with Final Fantasy VII within these side quests, within what happens in the Gold Saucer dates, both in Chapter 8 and Chapter 12, as well as the play. Because, for what we know, the play was like one of the last minute things that they decided on. That's why when Nojima said in that big interview, in that big development interview between himself, Uematsu, and Nomura, that love song is about all the relationship Aerith has essentially met her entire life in that one specific person, because it wouldn't fit alongside the whole narrative story that Final Fantasy VII is trying to tell you, right? It will be very, very strange if, like, for example, the game, like your save file, your playthrough doesn't transfer over to part 3. It'll be very weird. It could conflict a lot of the things that happen within part 3. That's why I don't think there's a canon route, because a person could literally just play this game once. Literally just play this game once. He could have whatever, narrative, he chooses to make. Like, let's say he goes on a date with Red 13 or Tifa or Yuffie, even Aerith. It wouldn't make sense to just specifically cater to that one individual, or the multiple individuals who just had that one playthrough. It wouldn't necessarily make sense. They have to think about it objectively as for the entire player base. It just cannot be just one individual group, because if they go through one part of Rebirth with these, side quests with the Gold Saucer dates, and then something else happens, it makes it confusing to them. That's why when you see a lot of people who went on the Tifa Gold Saucer date were a little confused about the Aerith dream date they were going. Like, Cloud, what are you doing? Why are you acting like this? You kissed Tifa and all that stuff, right? That's why it seems confusing. That's why it seemed confusing to them. Part of it is the Affinity System, simply because the Affinity System, as much as some people think it is a dating simulation, which I don't blame people, because a system like this normally works in dating simulations. But the Affinity System in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is done specifically just to showcase Cloud's relationship with the rest of the party and to grow, their bonds together. That's the whole point of it. It's not a dating simulation. And a lot of people don't understand that. And again, I don't blame them, simply just because it's a system that you normally see in dating games. That's obviously why I don't blame people. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to the main narrative of the story. Because at the end of the day, the main narrative of the story is how the story is progressing. You will see how the story progresses in part 3. It won't carry over whatever you did in Rebirth 2 part 3. It just wouldn't do it. They could do it. I'm not arguing that they won't do it, but they could do it. But if they didn't do the resolution scenes in Remake and kind of reference them, or like showcase like what resolution scene you got in Rebirth, that means that they didn't carry over whatever your save data is. And they want you to experience all 3, because they want you to continuously play it over and over again to experience every single one of them. It's a fun experience for you, the player, to go through and see just how Cloud's relationship with the party members are. That's the point of it. That's the point of it. It doesn't mean nothing to the main narrative of the story, because the main narrative of the story will just continue. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say you believe that the Aerith Gold Saucer dates and all that stuff are the canon route, right? Let's just say, for instance, that's what you believe in. Then in part 3, Cloud and Tifa, get together. Like, let's say under the highway, like in the original game, under the highway scene, there is some sort of scene where, like, they, showcase their romantic interest in one another. It'll be confusing to you, right? Because, whoa. That shouldn't be possible. Aerith is the canon route. Why is this happening? You see why it causes confusion? Because it's not meant to be part of the overarching narrative of the story. It's just supposed to showcase to you, the player, a experience and the relationship between Cloud and this character. It's a side thing. It's a side thing that only you, the player, will personally experience, but you can experience all the other portions. And it, like the mocap actor of Cloud said, and a bunch of the developers said, it all these events, all these, you know, Gold Saucer days are just fun things for you to experience, and it won't conflict with what the actual narrative of the story is. It just won't. Think of it as like this. Let's say this is the live stream, right? Let's say my arm is the live stream. Those dates and all that stuff, it's like a small little strand, right? That just smoothly goes back into the actual full live stream. That's essentially what they're trying to portray here, right? It's a fun experience you see, and then it goes back into the main narrative of the story. Now, if you remember in both Chapter 8 and Chapter 12, both times Cloud goes to sleep before you then go on a date on whoever it is, right? What if this is just simply a way for them to showcase to you that when Cloud goes to sleep, he wakes up not in the actual live stream, but a little strand that appears and then goes back into the live stream because of a certain event that happens, like let's say, you know, they go back to the room, they wake up the next morning and they face Don Corneo in Chapter 12. In Chapter 8, it's a little bit less believable simply because you get interrupted by Kate Sith, right? So it's like, that's where like that line of argument falters, but they could use that as some sort of like a live stream thing where like the memories or like an event that happens as a strand in the live stream goes back to the main live stream, not to connect or like to make that part of the main live stream. It's just to showcase a fun experience for you before the main narrative of the story continues on. You continue on to the main narrative of the story. That's why I say it means nothing, because it's not going to carry over to part 3 the same way the resolution scenes didn't carry over necessarily into part 2, because we don't get reference to them. That's why it is that's why the argument and the debate over which route is canon or not, I don't think exists. I don't think it's a thing that happens. It's a fun experience for you, the player, because it's a video game at the end of the day. Video games are supposed to be for fun. That's what video games are, right? It's not supposed to actually give you like the full narrative of the story. But there are certain things that you can, you know, see in the actual narrative that could lead into something that happens in part 3, right? Everything that happens in the chapters aside from the side stuff, like, you know, like the side quests, what I mean by side stuff, you could skip all that. You could skip all that and you could still follow the flow of the narrative of the story really, really well. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because you could still follow it. You could do none of this stuff and you could be perfectly fine. Now, granted, the Gold Saucer dates are technically you are going to do. I don't think you could skip them at all. But it doesn't mean much to the overgranding story of what happens. That's why I mean when I say it means nothing. To you, it could definitely mean something as your personal experience, as how you view the relationship between Cloud and the other characters. That means something. That is meaningful to you, right? And overall, like just the relationship between Cloud and the rest of the party. But to the overarching narrative of Final Fantasy VII in the Remake Project, it means nothing. It really doesn't, because 1, your save files will not carry over. 2, you can skip all the side quests so you don't actually see all that bonding you do with Cloud and the rest of the party. And the Gold Saucer dates are just legit just whoever you get to pick, right? Even at the end of it. Even at the end, after you beat the game, you could choose who you want on date. It doesn't really matter. They want you to experience it because it's a fun experience for the fans. That's what they wanted to do with this, right? The problem essentially became was that people thought the Affinity System meant that it's actually part of the canon narrative and the overarching narrative of the story, and that's what the confusion was. And that is, in part, a flaw with the Affinity System in the end. Another thing I want to point out that kind of helps with the argument for this take is that if you had the chance to experience Aerith's Gold Saucer date, right, you know that in it, she admits to Cloud that she initially thought that Zack was Cloud, or that, you know, there was Zack inside Cloud or something along those lines, and she admits that she was wrong and that she was trying to look for the real Cloud, that Zack, you know, that Cloud isn't Zack, right? That's a big part of her Gold Saucer date. But here comes the part later on in the story that kind of, I guess, I don't know if contradiction is the best word for it, but kind of goes against it. When you go on the date, and I understand the date is kind of skippable because it's part of Zack's whole side stuff that is in Rebirth, right? But if you go on the date, right, in that dream date, you notice that a lot of it is paying homage to the dates that she had with Zach, right? And it's not necessarily a one-to-one copy, but there are instances where, like, oh, wait a minute, this kind of is similar in some capacity to the way she and Zach went on a date in Crisis Core, right? Why would she do this? If she is able to control the way the date flows, why is she still trying to, like, get it through Cloud to, you know, make it seem like he's still Zach? That's where, like, there's an issue with that. That at least I personally find an issue with that story, writing wise. Why would she still try to see if she could get something out of Cloud that resembles of Zack in some form of capacity? Now, granted, I personally believe that it's not necessarily she's trying to get the Zack out of Cloud, right? But she only knows how to go on dates that she had with Zack, so she's trying to do the same thing with Cloud, like go on very similar dates, right? And that's where I personally thought that's where the Ever Dream date was. But let's say for the sake of argument, she's still trying to, or still believing that Zack is somewhere in Cloud, right? Somehow, some way. It contradicts what she says in the Gold Saucer date if you had that, you know, if you went on that date. That's why I feel like it doesn't matter in the end, because it doesn't connect properly into the main narrative of Final Fantasy VII. Like I said before, it's skippable. The Ever Dream date is skippable. But the main narrative of the story happens at the church during that dream scenario, right? Or you know, where she tells Cloud, she gives Cloud the white material, right? Essentially, I think that's where you're supposed to know fully that Eric doesn't see Zack and Cloud with some of the dialogue she says. Yet it's still the whole dream date thing still contradicts it. That's why it doesn't matter what date you go on, what, you know, whose bond you grow more at the end of the day, because the main narrative of the story is what we should be following, you know, mostly. And it's just, that's why I don't think this take is too unreasonable. That's why I don't argue or claim any route is the canon route, no matter what, because to me it doesn't matter, because it won't carry over to part 3. It just won't. Right? Whatever the story is that they're trying to tell you, it just will not carry over to part 3. It will not, like the same way the resolution scenes in Remake didn't necessarily carry over to part 2 in Rebirth. It just really doesn't. Only the stuff that actually is the actual narrative of the story do. For example, a lot of people will probably argue the Leslie stuff, the Leslie side quest that you get in Rebirth. The thing is that in Remake, it is part of the actual overall narrative of the story, because essentially Leslie is there to help you move along the plot. You get the hook shots, you know, the things to help you get over to the upper plate in, I forgot what chapter it was, but like after Sector 7 plate falls, you go to him or find him, and he essentially helps you move the plot along. Right? If they did not do anything with his story as a side quest at all in Rebirth, you'll probably be okay with it. You'll probably be kind of disappointed you didn't see like some sort of resolution with it, but it doesn't matter in the overarching story, because you could just not do that side quest at all and still hope that Leslie found whoever it was. Like he could go out and search for you know, his beloved that he's trying to find, but it doesn't really affect the main story past what happens in Remake. It really doesn't, because you could just assume he finds her, right? And that's what I mean by nothing. In the end, personally for you, it could mean a lot, right? Personally for you, it could mean very much a lot, and the relationship between the characters are essentially canon to you, right? It's like I'm saying, it's the relationship and the way Cloud responds and acts, you know, among the party is canon writing, as in, like, that's exactly how Cloud would react with each character, with each date. That part is what is canon. That part is what is true. But the event themselves means nothing to the overarching story of the narrative. Even in the original Final Fantasy VII, it meant nothing. From what I remember, after the Gold Saucer stuff, after the date, after the gondola, after the play, none of it is ever referenced again later on in the story, meaning that it's something fun for the player themselves to go through. That's why it means nothing to the overarching narrative of the story. Now, again, this isn't me telling you that this is the case, because I could very well be wrong. This is just to propose a kind of discussion into what whether or not you believe this take or not. Like I said, you could agree with this take, you could disagree with this take. I think it's probably, me personally, my own opinion is that's the most reasonable take. But it could also be the craziest take, you know, you could ever have in terms of this type of stuff. But again, it's all just to propose a discussion, and I do want to hear your thoughts. Please leave them down below in the comments. I do respond to comments, specifically ones that really want to have a discussion about this type of stuff. Definitely leave them down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more of my takes on Final Fantasy VII as we hopefully approach part 3 in like 3 years from now, right? But again, this is just something to discuss, and I would love to discuss this with you, right? Again, you don't have to agree with it. You could disagree with it. It's not gospel. It is not what the developers actually wanted to do. It is just a take that I have. It's just an opinion. That's all it is. I'm not stating it as fact. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye, everyone.